Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage. I'm Isaac Shaker and this is episode 68, John and Tahlvaen. John's been working on Tahlvaen since he was a kid. It's like a little dream that he had about a world that he kept building on over decades. And he's just getting ready to do a Kickstarter on it pretty soon. So let's listen in. I'm here today with John from the Tahlvaen Studios. John's launching a Kickstarter soon for the Veilborn campaign setting that's set in Tahlvaen. So, hey John, how you doing today?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just got back from soccer practice for my daughter. She's just turned 7, so just running around kicking a ball. But yeah, doing good. So, before we get started talking about Veilborn and Tahlvaen, I want you to tell people who John is outside of RPGs.
Well, John is an old nerd. John started way back in 2nd edition, and John's not going to talk about himself in the 3rd person.
Okay, good.
So, because that's weird. But man, I grew up in the 80s. You know, back when being a nerd was not a cool thing to be.
Right.
You know, and I was one of those, you know, those daydreamer kids that, you know, was always off by themselves and, you know, just kind of staring. And as you can imagine, kids picking on kids has not largely changed in the past, you know, 30 some odd years.
Yeah, my wife is a 5th grade teacher. I hear about it all the time.
You know, technology has evolved, but you know, the bullying hasn't. Well, no, that has too. But you know, so I kind of grew up during that, and you know, one of the things that I've always kind of had is a very overactive imagination, and so I didn't know it at the time, you know, but I started gravitating towards those Choose Your Own Adventure books, you know, Pillars of Pentargarn, Raid on Nightmare Castle, Spell of the Winter Wizard. Like those were kind of the first things that I got myself into. And, you know, I didn't know at the time, but those were kind of proto D&D-ish books for me.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, beyond that, you know, just kind of grew up being a nerdy kid. But my build, you know, I'm kind of built like a linebacker, so I played football in high school. You know, and so that stopped the bullying for a while, unsurprisingly. But I never really stopped daydreaming. But, you know, I got out of high school, went in the military, you know, basically, you know, lived, you know, as a grown-up. I am a senior solution enterprise security architect. My disciplines are information security, data protection, governance, risk compliance, and privacy, really as they relate to the ethical use of generative AI.
Okay.
So there's a really big call for that right now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of that's my day job. You know, that's what I do, you know, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And then I kind of come downstairs and work on my laptop and write the Game Master's Guide and the World Primer, because the Player's Handbook is written. But that's, you know, at a 50,000 foot level, that's kind of like how I got to, you know, where I am with this right now. A buddy of mine, back towards the beginning of the year, he shall forever be deemed the good idea fairy. He was like,
Okay.
yeah, he was like, dude, you should, you know, that setting of yours. And I'm like, yeah, what about it? He's like, you could put that on Kickstarter. I'm like, I have enough to do with my life right now. Like I don't need to do that. And then he didn't stop bothering me for like 5 months. You know, when your kids just kind of like never stop bothering you and you finally just kind of give in and you say, okay, fine, sure, or go ask your mom. I was finally like, sure, if it's going to shut you up, I will do this thing. And then I did it, and I put it up on Kickstarter, and I started the campaign, and I got it all approved. And the next day, I'm sitting there in my office, and I'm staring out the window, and I go, "Oh my God, I put this out on the internet, which means it's in public,
Yep.
which means I have to protect my intellectual property, which means I have to copyright this and file trade like all the things that like I do for my day job like kind of came crashing down, and I was like, I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And so I did that in short order.
Yeah, I saw that you had a trademark already, which is yeah, pretty fast.
Yeah, I work very closely with a bunch of legal teams, just by virtue of what I do. And so I was like, oh, I gotta get on top of this. And so yeah, all my trademarks are in, as of October 3rd at 5:05 in the morning. All 3 books were uploaded to the Copyright Office, so hopefully that will get sorted out soon. But yeah, that's the TLDR.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
not so TLDR version of it.
yeah. And I feel like a lot of small time creators don't see the worth in doing an official copyright, because your stuff is still like copyrighted by virtue of you creating it. But if I understand it right, if you have an official copyright, it's not just you can sue someone, but also like the government will enforce it somewhat and like fine them in addition to you suing them for damages.
Right. Yeah, you have enhanced legal standing, basically. Somebody can come up and back you and say, oh, well, hey, this stuff is, I had ideas about this. And, if they didn't go and copyright it, well, they can claim that they had the idea, but I like, using myself as the example, well, that's great, but I've gone and I've actually filed my intellectual property around this, and I have legal grounds saying that that this is the stuff that I have created. It doesn't guarantee that I will win, but it balances things in my favor.
Right. Well, I hope you don't have to use it. I guess is the best way of putting it.
All this is costing me so much money. I hope that I don't have to use it too.
Well, on the flip side, I hope it's worth it for you to actually do it. I feel like for many people, they don't bother to file those things because of the fees attached to them. Cutting into the startup that you get from Kickstarter. So I hope it's successful enough that it's worth it.
Same. At the very least, it's risk mitigation.
For sure.
And I'm happy with that. And if it buys me that peace of mind, then that helps me sleep better at night.
Yeah, yeah. So you started daydreaming, and then, maybe that's an oversimplification of your childhood, but you started your path to RPGs by daydreaming as a kid. And then you said you joined the military, and I've heard a lot of people start playing D&D when they're in the military. Is that when you started playing?
I played before that.
Okay.
I really didn't pick up and start playing until I want to say my freshman year of high school. I had picked up the books before, like the second edition Player's Handbook, but right. I would look through it, and as a 13, 14-year-old, I didn't really have a concept of like, oh, okay, this is what this means, and this is what this means in the wider understanding of like how that would apply in combat or the narrative of role play.
Yeah, it's such a complicated game. You need someone to introduce you to it. Typically, if you're just reading the
Yeah,
book on your own, it's so hard to get into.
yeah, and I didn't, and like I had the book and I was like, oh, this is cool cover art because it was Jeff Easley, or I would open it and I would see Keith Parkinson's stuff, or Clive Caldwell's or Larry Elmore's art, and I was like,
Yep.
this is cool looking, and I love this, and there's spells about fireballs and lightning bolt, and like, oh, I just need like a rod of amber and some rabbit's fur and I can cast lightning bolt, and like, I wish at 48 years of age I could forget the components for lightning bolt and I can remember parts of my job. but here we
Stuff sticks, huh?
Yeah. But like, that's how I picked it up, but it wasn't really until my freshman year where I started playing, and even then none of us had any idea what we were doing. We picked up the old gray Forgotten Realms box set.
Okay.
The old TSR one. And I remember sitting in my buddy's bedroom. It was one of those, hey, we're 14 years old. We have 4 pizzas. We have Jolt and a bunch of chips, and this is what we're doing for the entire weekend. And I played an Elven Ranger from Everesca. I remember that. And none of us had a clue what we were doing. We were rolling dice. We were telling the filthiest jokes that our 14-year-old brains could come up with, which
sounds familiar.
As you can imagine, it was pretty horrible. And we would play until we got tired and we would pass out, and then we would wake up and we would play some more. And it was the time of our lives. And I still, at this age, chase after that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I hope that like new players get that, like that sense of like that high up, where they're like, oh man, like this is so amazing, and like we're doing all these things, and we don't care about the rules, but we're just having fun. Like that's something that like I hope everybody who picks up dice and a character sheet has.
Yeah, for sure. So did you start off? Well, I guess you didn't start off DMing. You said you were doing other stuff, but like it transitioned that way pretty quickly for you.
Yeah, I mean, I was a player for a good long time. It wasn't until I think 4th edition came out, and
oh wow,
that is the last time that I will say that word. 'Cause,
not a fan.
No, not. The world of Dungeons and Dragons craft. Yeah, I did not favor that edition at all. I
liked it, but we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, no, like my friends love it, and like I will never yuck anybody's love of any particular edition. Like I didn't like it. Like there were things that I just didn't like about it, but like for them, it was the most balanced, and like they loved doing it. My buddy was like, yeah, like I can tell somebody to move and they have to move and they have to take a healing surge, and I was like, awesome, man. Like good on you. Like I'm glad that you have fun with it. But
my experience with it was that it's much more fun when you play it online compared to in person.
Yeah, because wasn't DDO like all 4th edition?
I don't know. I never played that.
Okay. Yeah, I worked in the MMO industry for a little while, and I was trying to remember. But yeah, around the end of 3rd edition, or 3.5, and when 4th came out is when I started to kind of DM. So 2008-ish is kind of when I started to really be a DM.
Okay.
And the first few times it was rough.
Yeah,
Um,
for everybody.
yeah, because I didn't know how to balance a table yet, and I didn't know how to say no, and it got pretty Monty Hall. It got pretty out of hand. And our friend group back then was big, so it was
Mhm.
like 12 people at the table, and I was
Wow.
like, sure, I can do this. I failed spectacularly, but it it was those early failures that kind of gave me that tool set that I needed to be the DM that I am now.
Yeah, yeah. Experience through fire, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, now I just psychologically torture my players, which is not always awesome, but sometimes it is.
Okay. So, want to talk about Tahlvaen and Veilborn. So,
Sure.
did that start as a personal campaign setting for your personal group?
Um, it actually didn't, and like they still like the friends that I have been friends with for 20 years, they they still haven't played in it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was saying at the beginning. This all started back in the 80s uh, when I was very young.
Uh,
Before I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and I just remember kind of sitting at the lunch tables by myself and just kind of staring off. I was introvert back then, and I am now. It's just that because I consult, I have to be extroverted for work. So
yeah.
I've had to develop that skill set to be kind of ambiverted. But naturally, I
Ambiverted.
yes, I think that's a word. If it isn't, then let's just Oxford
I,
Dictionary this.
I like it. It's cool.
But I was a smaller kid, um, so I got picked on. I got pushed
Mhm.
around and all that, and I was quiet. That got me picked on too, and I kind of started just daydreaming about this place where I could go
Mhm.
and I wouldn't be a dork and I wouldn't be a dweeb and a nerd and a loser. Um, and I could go be a hero. I could fight monsters, and there was magic, and all these other things that I would daydream about, because about that time movies like Dragon Slayer came out, with Peter McNichol,
Mhm.
and Krull, the one with the glaive and everything. And I loved those movies, and so like that, I immediately was like, oh, like wouldn't it be amazing if like I could just go to a place like that and I wouldn't be such an outsider. I wouldn't be too quiet, or I wouldn't be too this or too that or not enough or this, that, or the other.
Uh-huh.
And so like that's how Tahlvaen came about. But when I was 6, 7, it didn't start as Tahlvaen. It started as this one kingdom, and as I kind of daydreamt more and more and got older, Draukareth was the name of the kingdom, and then Ivara, the continent, formed around it, and then other continents started forming, and then the world, and then Tahlvaen came about, and then other worlds in the solar system. And then I was like, well, Tahlvaen needs moons, so that there's tides, because I'm a science nerd too. Like I love astronomy and I love physics and chemistry and earth sciences and stuff like that. I'm just not smart enough to actually do any of those things. I love them.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty common.
But every few years, like, more would kind of gradually build onto it. And that's kind of how the Veilborn universe came about. And then by the time it got, quote unquote, fleshed out like that, I was in my 20s and I finally had an understanding of like, oh, this is how the rules work. And I was like, okay, I can start to build on this now. Like, like my brain was like, okay, I can anchor things to this and I can make it work, in such a way that if I ever want to do something with this, it will be mechanically sound. So when I first actually started developing the world, it was all done in like 3rd edition. Man, rewriting all of this for 5th edition.
Yeah, going from 3rd edition where it's like, +1 every level, sort of, or plus half one, to the 5e system of bounded accuracy. Yeah, that's a trip.
Yeah, and like I was like trying to like research on the internet. I'm like, all right, so how do like challenge ratings work? And I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, so it's kind of just like a vibing system for like 5e. And I'm like, all right, so there's like not really a mechanical way to do this. Okay. So like it took me a while to try to kind of uplift things.
You want to know a system that has a nice formula for calculating challenge ratings?
Sure.
4th edition.
Push you. Sir, I have a spray bottle and I'm not afraid to use it. But like that's how things came about. And I was like, okay, like, this is how everything is going to work.
Well, I liked what you said about like this starting as a daydreaming exercise. I did something similar, but it was like something I would, maybe daydreaming isn't quite the right word for it, but I would do it while I was like trying to fall asleep. And then I ended up sort of like lucid dreaming the same dream for like most of my childhood. And yeah, it's a really like unique experience and like sort of weird quasi memory to have that is like just your own. So sharing it is difficult. So it's cool that you've taken that step.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's hard to articulate sometimes, especially like I have ADD, so my brain bounces around a whole lot, and so like I want to tell a story linearly, but my brain's like, no, you got to go like over here and over here and over here to do it. And I'm like, can we not today? Like, can we just like narratively tell something in a way that's going to make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've done a good job of representing emotionally what the world means to you within what you've written about it. Like, one of the questions I was going to ask you is that it seems like the world, from the way you're writing about it, is that it's very personal and important to you. And it seemed like it's almost like an old friend or a pet. Do you know that line in like the third Thor movie where Thor is talking about his hammer and one of the other like characters is saying, "It sounds like this hammer was very important to you," like a very personal connection. And it sounds like Tahlvaen is kind of like your Mjolnir in that analogy.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you need to say?
it was definitely an escape, as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's one of those things where I want it to be somebody else's toy.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be a place where other people can find a sense of permanency and tell their own stories. And that's the thing that I'm like really finding my passion in is that at the end of the day, I've created this place that is lived in. It has all these things that have happened. It has a cosmology unlike any other in the D&D universe. And like I want people to love it and enjoy it and keep coming back to it.
Yeah. Well, you said you like to do things in order, so I was thinking let's start at the beginning with like the creation myth that you have for Tahlvaen.
There are two.
All right.
There is what happened, and there is what mortals think happened. And they're not that similar.
Start off with some propaganda. All right.
Yes. Basically.
Let's get the fake story first, then, so then you can reveal the truth later on.
Okay. The mortal races believe that the Veilborn, who are the deities, came about. There was this horrible war that transpired between them and eldritch things from beyond. And when the Veilborn sealed them away, that is what gave rise to the Veil, which is this recurring, all-pervasive thing that is always referred to, in the setting.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We will definitely get to that. And then mortals believe that once that was done, the gods were like, okay, cool. High five. We did our jobs. Pat on the backs. Let's create the mortal races. And then they did. And then they kind of just pulled back because the concept of free will and all the things that go with that.
Yeah.
They think that, okay, the gods don't want to get in the way of that. So they're just kind of letting us do our thing. And they, mortals are like, that's why the gods are distant from us. That's why they don't really answer prayers or grant spells or things of that nature.
Yeah, how much does free will really mean if there's always someone coming in and fixing everything for you?
Exactly. And that's kind of the 50,000-foot view of it. That's the propaganda version of it.
Okay.
That is the ecclesiastical version that everybody, by and largely, accepts. The truth of it is, in the beginning, there was nothing, and there continued to be nothing for time immemorial because time didn't exist. And then something happened, and that is when the Outer Five came into being. These are eldritch horrors, and they existed for eons. And when their very presence began to unravel reality itself, something reflexively created the Veilborn. So these are not beneficent deities. They are responses to a problem.
Kind of like a white blood cell being summoned to deal with an infection?
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned like the eldritch horror beings in the first story. Those would be the same sort of like monster things in the real story?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And the Veilborn sealed them away. And they did do this within the Veil. And the Veil is the ethereal plane. So beyond the ethereal plane, far, far, far beyond it, are where the outer five are sealed. But because the outer five are sealed far past the borders of the ethereal, where they're at, their corruption has spread into the ethereal plane. And so everything within the ethereal is tainted and corrupted and just profaned.
Okay.
So there's no planar travel. There's no summoning. There's no gating. There's no teleportation circles. There's no bags of holding. There's no portable holes or Hewer's handy haversacks, because all of those things transit the ethereal plane.
I thought those used the astral plane within the normal D&D cosmology.
Do they? I'm pretty sure they use the ethereal plane, because it's the closest thing to the prime material.
Well, the ethereal plane is the closest one, because it exists like concurrently with the material plane within the cosmology, where that's where ghosts hang out when you can't see them. They're on the ethereal plane, which overlaps, and the only thing that really exists in both of them is force magic, is typically. So a wall of force will exist in both the material and the ethereal plane. Otherwise, things are just in one or the other, and magic weapons can kind of be in both sometimes. But the astral plane is what's used for traveling between different planes. The astral plane, you can sort of think as the space in between the different planes within the usual D&D cosmology, where that's where you access for teleporting, for conjuring, for portable holes, and, well, sort of, like for extra-dimensional spaces like portable holes and bags of holding, those are kind of different, so maybe I shouldn't be lumping those in with the astral plane, but it's definitely the one that's used for teleportation and other stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, I could have sworn they all transited the ethereal. That's why
there's so much overlapping stuff there, to be honest. I know that, usually that's how it's explained, but then there's other spells that do the same thing, but use the ethereal plane or the shadow plane, which also overlaps. Mm-hmm. And now they have the Feywild as another overlapping thing, so maybe there's some new spells that use the Feywild for the same stuff. So I get it. Honestly, it doesn't matter what the official Faerun answer is, because your world is not Faerun, so who cares?
Yeah, I mean, so essentially the Veilborn have closed off planar travel. The only thing that can be summoned are elementals,
because everything else is corrupted by the outer five.
Right. Then the Veilborn were like, okay, we've sealed them away, and we are going to seed life. But it wasn't the mortal races yet. There were 3 proto-races.
Okay, so the gods made these 3 proto-races for, I guess, why did they need life? Just because they're bored?
They were newly formed deities, and they were like, we would like to create life instead of just holding the 5 back in this prison. And when that life began to go very errant, things went wholly off the rails, way off the rails. There was some megalomania, and there was protomancy going on, and things like that. And the gods were like, nope, not on my watch. and they got out the divine squirt bottle and were like, you better pray to Saint Felicia, the patron saint of goodbyes. And
it sounds very similar to the Tower of Babel. The initial creation stretches too far, and then God casts them down.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I'm a big history person, so it's all of the early civilizations have that cast down, smite down, flood type mythos, somewhere or something analogous to it. And I wanted to have races that existed prior to mortals because I wanted something to be found by adventurers later on.
Well, yeah, I think that the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide even says, like, this is a world of ancient empires. You need to have, like, not just one, but, like, sort of several layers for if you're designing your own world of, like, dead empires so that players have something to explore if you're doing the traditional D&D style game. So, yeah,
exactly.
that totally makes sense.
Yeah, and I way leaned into that.
It's a tried and true strategy.
Yeah, I mean, is that something that you're doing with your setting as well?
It's sort of developed that way over time. That was not my initial conception for it, but it kind of got added on. I think I've done a sort of faster generation cycle than most other people do. And that's perhaps also inspired by history. Like, in the traditional Faerun setting, like the time of the ancient empires, they're separated by like 10,000 years or something. Mm-hmm. Like the Dragon Empire was 50,000 years ago, and the Elf Empire was 20,000 years ago, and then there's other ones that are more recent, but those are the big ones. Mine, I'm inspired by the Greek myths that Troy was in 1100-ish. So if you're using that as a marker and you don't want to go too far away from it, then you only have a few hundred years of history to work with to try and work in ancient empires. But also, what counted as ancient was pretty different back then. Like, if something was 200 years old, people didn't really know what it was anymore because everyone that remembered it was dead. Mm-hmm. There's a history book where the Greeks are traveling through, this group of Greeks is traveling through Persia, and they find this capital of the Hittite Empire that's only been abandoned for like 100 or 200 years at that point, and they have no idea what it is. It's just this entire abandoned city. They do not know who lived there or why it's there, why it's abandoned. Nothing. They pass through it, and it just seems like that's sort of impossible from our modern perspective, that someone would forget something that was only there 200 years ago, but it happened all the time.
Written records didn't exist at that time like they do now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But mostly still oral traditions back then.
Yeah, like records were used for like accounting at that point, but not for like stories. That was still, like, this is one of the first history books that I'm referring to here. Not the first one, but one of the first ones. So it's, I suppose I should qualify that. One of the first ones in Europe. So yeah, it's stuff that your generational cycles for empires can be a lot shorter than you might think they are if you don't have a literate tradition. Mm-hmm. But anyways, yes, I do the same thing in my world of having layered empires as D&D recommends. It's cool to see that you're doing it too.
Yeah, thanks.
So we're starting off with these proto races, which are kind of like, I guess, a failed creation, and the Veilborn say, "You guys suck. We're going to start over." What were they fixing that they needed to start over?
So, one of the races got into ever-pervasive genetic engineering in a, not like a eugenics, but like a...
making dinosaurs?
No, we want to evolve to become like the perfect species.
Okay.
And so it was like just this horribly, like they were just like horribly mutated.
I guess I'm missing why that's not eugenics.
Well, they weren't.
They weren't racist about it.
They weren't doing it in that vein. They were doing it in a very hedonistic way, very dark Eldar ish.
Give me gills and wings and compound eyes and a third toe on my left foot.
Yeah. Designer genetics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One of the races had developed psionics, and they were just enslaving anything that they could. And, it was a let's just emotion is a useless construct. Let's read it out of ourselves and just let's become these perfect thinking things and enslave everything that isn't us. And let's ascend, basically. And, we think that the gods themselves are flawed and we should take their place, which the gods did not look favorably upon. And then the third race started screwing around with time, with chronomancy, and that is a big no-no.
These races sound like they fit more in like a Star Trek plot than usual D&D plot.
Basically, yeah. I was like, okay, like, what would make the gods like want to wipe out like a race? Like that was what I could think of.
Oh, not bad.
Because at 12 years old, that sounded like the coolest thing. My 12-year-old brain. And so those races went the way of the dodo. And then there was like 10 or 15,000 years where the world was just quiet. There were still things there, but, there were no sapient life. And then, in kind of keeping with, the D&D way of things, the elves came about first. In relative proximity, probably within a few hundred years, the dwarves awakened, and they remained kind of the ones that had control of the world, as it were, for probably 10,000 years. And then humans came into the picture. And then it was halflings next. And then the Kirali. And the Kirali are really just, it's an umbrella term. The Kirali are the Ganassi. They're the plain touched.
Okay. Oh, and you're just doing Ganassi because you just have the elements coming in, not any of the other planes for the alignment ones.
So I'm still including Aasimar and Tieflings, just because I know that there are players that are very enamored with those two particular races.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't want to take those out. I went through probably 7 or 8 different revisions of, should we take them out? Should we include them? It was very back and forth. And ultimately I decided we're just keeping them in. And so there's air, earth, fire, water, Aasimar, Tiefling, and then there is the Songbound, which are spirit. Because that's air, earth, fire, water, and spirit are the aspects of the resonance, which is magic. And so that's why the Kirali are present within Tahlvaen.
Okay.
So after the Kirali, the Nullborn were the next to awaken, and the Nullborn are our psionic race. And when I was uplifting all of this into 5th edition, I was like, oh man, I'm going to be ahead of the curve because 5th edition doesn't have anything psionic yet. And now I'm like looking around, I'm like, they have psionics in 5th edition now.
Well, no one likes them. I mean, the new Scion, did you see it? Like, I saw it and it was like, this is just a sorcerer, but like slightly different. Like, it's not satisfying for people that are used to psionics from the previous editions.
This is fully psionic.
Good.
So the Nullborn, they have what equates to spell resistance. So they get 8 plus their character level for spell resistance.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they are the only race that they're magically dead. They can't perceive magic.
It's kind of the opposite of those spirit chorale that you're talking about.
Yep. And so, in absence of being able to perceive the resonance in the song, they were like, okay, well, let's train our minds. And the class that I have created for them is the Ascendant. And then it branches into 3 subclasses. The School of the Fractured Mind, which is basically the old 3/5 Psion. So it's a pure psionic caster class. And it is psionic. It's not a sorcerer variant or any kind of magic user variant. It is psionic through and through.
Cool.
There is the School of the Shattered Blade, which is basically the soul knife from 3/5. And then there is the Silent Bastion, which is the psychic warrior. Because when I originally made these, that's what they were modeled off of. And recreating these in 5th edition was difficult because in 5e it has that central skeleton, and then you branch it off, and I was like, oh man, this is hard. but I did it. They've all got their own. They're called techniques, which are their psionic powers. I'm really excited to see how people react to these.
Well, it sounds better than what Wizards has released for psionics for 5th edition to me. So
hey,
that's
Wizards,
cool.
I'm a pretty good game designer. Just putting that out there if you're listening.
Well, that's cool.
And then the Venari were the last ones to awaken. They're very humanoid, but they're born near places in the world that are thin. Like there's a tear in the veil that's near there, or there is a breach that could be imminent within years or decades. But it allows them to react differently. They have a little bit of foresight. They have a sense for things. Yeah, they're just a little bit more attuned to the world than others are.
Gotcha. Okay. So one of my questions I wanted to ask you is like, what is the veil? And I feel like we've given a rough outline of it. It's what separates the material plane from the bad juju monsters, the outer 5. Is there anything else that you feel like we've missed in covering it that's important?
So the veil, at its heart, it's the ethereal. It on the other side looks very much like a mirror of Tahlvaen itself. There are fundamental differences. The land is somewhat altered. Forests that exist in the Veil don't necessarily exist in the real world because they've been harvested, or removed. And cities that exist in the real world generally do exist in the Veil, but they are like twisted, non-Euclidean things, very H.P. Lovecraft, in their nature, because one of the themes of the Veil is very Lovecraftian horror.
Yeah.
Everything has weird, shadowy, distorted shapes to it. Everything is kind of covered in this greenish, silvery, basically ectoplasm. It's called Veil stuff, and it's the thing that corrupts everything. You can step on it, as long as you don't touch it. Like bare skin, you're fine. But like if you step on it with boots, you're fine.
It's like mercury poisoning. You have to touch.
Yeah, the longer you stay in the Veil, the more likely you are to develop corrupting effects, which there are rules for. I included that. Included rules for paint and how to get rid of it. One of the things that I brought back was ability point damage and spells to be able to restore things like that, because I know in 5th edition restoration, greater restoration just takes care of curses and condition type things.
Right, yeah.
But with the way that I've done magic, it will take care of ability point issues as well. So yeah, it's you don't want to get stuck on the other side.
Yeah, well, and that's the way restoration used to work in 3rd edition, is it also restored ability points. They kind of got rid of ability point damage for the most part in 5th edition.
They did, yeah, and I understand why. It was a slog. It sucked to get hit by a shadow and be down, a D4 plus, however many points of strength. It sucked to have to sit around and say, okay, well, the cleric's got one lesser restoration and they can do a D4, per casting, and now we have to sit here for 2 days.
Right.
But a lot of Tahlvaen is consequences. How do we do this in such a way that we're going to be okay? Which kind of brings me to my next point. You only get one life. There's no coming back.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you don't have planar travel, then there's no afterlife.
Yeah. I mean, you can still do it within like a round. You still get your death saves. And obviously it's up to a GM running it. It's their table. It's ultimately their rules. But the setting itself this is your life. It's precious, and you only have the one. Make the best of it. If you want to make that heroic stand, make that heroic stand. If you want to act like an idiot and just kill your character, who am I to say no? Like you can do that too. But that's basically the tall and short of it at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned like the Veilborn making the veil and what they did for all that stuff. Are they separate or sort of like this unified entity? Like, are there like 10 of them and their names are Jim, Joe, and Curly?
There are 8 of them.
Okay.
And yeah, there's 8 of them, and they each have their own portfolio and their spheres of influence. Like Lurien is more or less seen as the father of the gods. He's basically the Lathander analog of the setting. He is the god of the sun. And then there is Velsha, who is the kind of the goddess of darkness. Her things are lust, assassination, and deception. Her big things are, betrayal and beauty. So that's her thing. But at the end of the day, even though not all of them are good aligned, they're all better than the alternative. And they know that. If any of them fail, what comes crashing through is so much worse. So, like she's chaotic neutral as far as a deity goes, but she pulls her weight, because if she doesn't, what comes through is going to unmake her, and she values her life. So it's ultimately self-serving. The next is Sarun, who is our god of war. He's very, very lawful neutral, very endurance, discipline, fight the good fight, stand up, hold the line, do good things. After that is Kalia. He is the goddess of magic and kind of rebirth and passion. Basically, her passion and that spark is what what drives magic for people, or what drives people to want to transform magic into, new and interesting effects. It's that esoteric, high-level magic overview. Morrigal is the god of death.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, very Grim Reaper. Not evil, but just everything has its time. Everything has a lifespan, and when it comes to that eventual end, he's there, and that's the end of it. There's Avoria, who is the goddess of nature, but she is a very primal aspect of it. Basically, the predation aspect of it, where nature can be beautiful, and it can be all these wondrous things, but it can be savage and deadly and brutal. Nature is untamed at its core. A tornado doesn't care that it rips up 1,000 trees,
right,
or a cow in a field. It just is, and that's her. That's what she is. And the one goddess that really gets the most, I would say, attention probably within the world is Zuriel. And she is the bound flame. She is the goddess of fate and knowledge and prophecy. And she is the keeper of the loom, which is the instrument from which fate is written. So when oracles, or those who keep oaths, or people who seek to cheat fate, it's her that they invoke. And so she's featured very prevalently in that theme. So, thematically, she's very important. And then the last Veilborn is Vailian. And he is the god of air and weather and destruction. He is the storm that walks, Fury given form. He doesn't care if you're standing in the storm. He just cares that you survive it, that you endure through it, and that's his big thing. That's the pantheon, and as you can tell, like, none of them are happy, huggy, like, hey, let's have a picnic with any one of these guys.
Well, and I feel like that's more of a modern representation of what gods are, to be honest. Like, it feels like, a lot of ancient religions like Norse and Greek and the Egyptian pantheon were all, they're there, but the gods aren't really friendly for the most part. And, even the Bible, like, God is vengeful a lot of the time, and it's like, I feel like the nice attitude that people ascribe to God is not really backed up by Scripture.
Old Testament God, not a nice chap. No. I am the product of a very Catholic mother and a very Jewish father. And I grew up in Catholic military school. So I am a very lapsed Catholic, but there are definitely a lot of things that I remember. New Testament God, Old Testament God, really different people.
yeah, definitely. All right, well, thanks for detailing the gods there. How do people worship them if they're, like, a lot of worship in D&D has more like a very transactional relationship. Like, I give you offerings and then you give me, like, clerical magic. But you've indicated that they don't do that. So what are people's relationship with the gods when, I guess, they still have magic from other sources? Why would they care about this person?
So the gods don't grant spells. The gods hear prayers. They are just silent and distant. There are no paladins. There are no clerics. Okay. There are clerics and clergy in the context that there are priests in churches, but they are not spellcasters. They are just priests. Like you go down to church on Saturday or Sunday and you see the priest or the pastor or the rabbi or whoever. That's the equivalent of what you would find in Tahlvaen.
Yeah.
There is a spellcasting class, and that is the Weave Shaper. There are other classes that can perceive the resonance and can use it to some extent. You know, the Tail Singer and the Warden. And the Tail Singer is my take on the Bard, but it's different. There's a much heavier emotional component to it, and the Warden doesn't have any divine investiture like a paladin does. You know, none of the Veilborn grant him or her powers. It's their oaths and their ideals that allow them to tap into the resonance to give them those little extra kind of bumps to augment their abilities. But Weave Shapers are the spellcasting class. If you need healing done, it's a Weave Shaper.
Okay.
But the gods don't give them that power. It's just the resonance. And the resonance flows either from Thera or Vera. Thera is the receptive, kind of softer aspect of the resonance. It's that half of it. And then Vera is the transformative, the more assertive aspect of it. And Tail Singer, Warden, Weave Shaper, they all use the same spell list.
Oh, cool.
So, one spell list to rule them all. So if you wanted, because there's no clerics, no druids, no warlocks, no wizards, no sorcerers, nothing. It's Weave Shaper. And if you wanted to make something like a cleric, you would say, okay, I would like to make a Weave Shaper who is attuned to Thera. That is a fundamental attunement that you have to decide at first level when you take the class. Like, there's no take backsies. It's Thera or Vera. That's it. One or the other. So if you wanted to be a cleric, you would choose Thera, and you would probably take very spirit or water, or spirit and water focused weaves, which are our spells, because those are the ones that are very healing focused, and that's how you would heal people. And the nice part of it is you could create another Weave Shaper and take Vera and take Spirit and Water, and they would be completely different. They would function completely differently.
Okay. Be more like aggressive and vengeful, kind of.
Right. Like, Tier 1 Water Weave. It's called River's Grace. You call the gentle current of the song to mend what is broken. The target regains 1d8 plus your Weave Shaper level hit points as the water drains from memory and compassion and soaks into their skin and soul. The weave can close wounds, ease pain, and steady failing breath. The water fades once its work is done, leaving behind a single perfectly round droplet clinging to the healed place. Optional. Pay 1 additional strain to increase the healing an additional 1d8. You may pay this multiple times for a maximum of 3 additional strain per casting. Because we don't use spell slots, we use the strain mechanic.
Is it kind of like the PowerPoints from 3rd edition psionics?
Kinda. It's like increasing the level of the spell, but what it does, it can negatively impact you. Instead of just saying, okay, well, I'm just going to have like no power points left or something, the more you overstrain yourself, that has other mechanical effects to it.
Okay. So, like, you become sick or lose hit points or something.
Right. Yeah. Like you become mentally fatigued, like, and your strain does not come back after a long rest. It is one of those things that like you actually have to rest because it's draining to do these things. It's meant to be impactful.
And is this same system used for all of the different spellcasters?
Yeah. Yep. Tailsingers get it and wardens get it. And then here's same tier 1 water. But this one is aligned to Vera. It's called Drown the Voice. You conjure a dense sphere of water around the creature's head. It hovers unnaturally, cutting off sound and voice, not air. The target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or become silenced for the duration. While silenced, they cannot, cast spells, blah, 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 blah. Their speech is reduced to bubbled panic and muffled rage. At the end of each of their turns, the creature may repeat the saving throw to end the effect. Optional, pay 1 additional strain to cause 1d4 psychic damage when the weave is first shaped, or to force disadvantage on the first saving throw.
This feels like the waterboarding spell.
Yeah, basically. You put a big bubble of water around their head, and they can't cast spells at you. And then if you want to be extra mean to them, you do psychic damage, or you make them have disadvantage on the saving throw. And that's like, as you can see the fundamental difference between Vera's style of a water weave and Thera's. Like, Thera's is like, okay, I'm going to heal you. Vera's is like, I'm not going to allow you to speak and hurt me.
Yeah. Definitely pretty different. So the weave is what lets people access magic, or the resonance is what you called it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the resonance.
And from what you've written about the game and what you've said so far, it feels very like musical in how people describe it. Is there an actual musical quality to it within how you've conceived it, or is that just more like, people often use analogies of language to describe things that are outside of the normal scope of their experience?
I was a theater nerd in high school, along with being a football kid. And growing up, my mother exposed me to a lot of musicals. So music has always been a very, very big part of my life. I can't read it, but the only place I sing now is in the car in the shower.
Right,
but
yeah.
I used to sing a lot. And so I always wanted magic to be like that. I wanted it to be like this harmonious, sonorous, just beautiful act of, music where, if somebody's singing something, it's just heart-wrenching, or just soul-achingly beautiful to hear it. And, that it's something that I wanted to thematically develop as part of magic.
So do people like sing their song, their spells out? Like you have to sing like Yankee Doodle went to town when you're healing someone's wounds. I mean, I'm being childish here with the description.
No, I get it. There's, it's like D&D where there's a verbal, thematic, and material component. if there is a verbal component to it, if the Weave Shaper wants to sing through it, they can. If it's just a gentle lullaby, and they're just humming through it, that's, something that they can do. It's, as a DM, putting myself in those shoes, I think of it as a very personal act, as, okay, my character would do this, and it would be personal to that character, and it's going to be different for everybody. So,
Yeah.
what would uh, Jim's character do, and Bob's character do, and Steve's character do, versus, what would John's character do, or, Isaac's character do. It would be, I think, personal for everybody.
Okay. All right. Kind of along that that same road, from what you've written about the world, there's this like vibe of mystery and music to it. I wrote down, it feels like you're trying to evoke this like feeling of a hidden grove or meadow inside of a thick forest that you stumble on. Is like the vibe that you're trying to get across for what the world is like. Does that feel like an accurate representation to you?
It does. There's places in the world that I've imagined hundreds and hundreds of times, and I hope somebody gets to imagine it just as vividly as I have. And then there's places that I've written into the primer right now in the Veil. It's just this beautiful, serene, idyllic place. And I hope that somebody imagines walking through beautiful fields of tall golden grass, and just they kind of just feel it around them, and they can look up and they can see the mountains in the distance, and there's snow on top of them all year round, and and they can turn around and the ocean is behind them, and they can hear the waves crashing, and I hope that those are the things that I hope that I can evoke that, or at least give that spark to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
to help them imagine a grove of their own. Like that's what I really want.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really good goal to have for the campaign setting. I like that.
Yeah. When I dreamt all this up, it was just me. I've dreamt up a whole world that I'm the only person who's ever been in it.
Right.
And I would love other people who adventure there with me.
I had a kind of a follow-on question to that. Is so if the world is like mysterious and musical and like a hidden treasure, how do you express that feeling in more settled areas? Like a crowded town square where it's market days, there's a bunch of people. Like it feels like that's sort of the opposite of a shared mystery treasure. It's more like sort of mundane, at least for the people within the world experiencing it. Do you have a way to make that, or is it more just like the game and the setting doesn't focus on those types of scenes?
Those scenes they're going to be what a DM wants to tell the story with. Rel Kareth is, for me, where it all started. Of all of the nations across the world, that one has the most history, because that's kind of where my heart is. It is very dark, very gothic, mountains, dark forest, lake, dark castles, and you're familiar with Dragonlance?
Oh man, not really, to be honest.
Okay.
It's a series I keep trying to read, but I can't get into it.
It was my first series of books. It's very Knights of Solamnia, and so that's always the energy that it evokes for me. So it's very very gothic, very very Germanic, very very rigid, very orderly. And if people want to have a market day there, they can. They can go to Varenhold, and they can see that there's cobblestone streets and everything is nice and orderly. And there's still kids running around playing, and they're still laughing, but there's a more somber mood. But people are still there. They're still selling their wares. They're still trying to make a living. But there's the smell of damp earth and pine and stone, and the tone that you're going to get there is, yeah, there's a mystery. Yeah, there's treasure. But it's not going to be courtly intrigue. It's going to be somebody broke a vow, and the family can't live with that shame. And you need to find out why.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how that has a similar feeling.
Yeah, and then you go to the League, which is the nation just next door, but it's to the south. The Avaran League. And the Avaran League is very much cosmopolitan. It is very heavily modeled off of the Venetian city-states. Money talks, gold coin, anything is for sale. This is that place where you're going to find courtly intrigue. And that's the treasure there. There's spices. There are exotic things from all over the world that you can find there. Those are those treasures. So it's for the DM to decide what kind of treasures they want to expose the players to. And there's so many things that they can kind of showcase from all over.
Okay. All right. We kind of talked around a little bit. For mechanically, you described a bit how magic works for players, where it's you have a strain mechanic, and a lot of you've put everything into kind of its own spell list, made a bunch of your own spells. So I feel like I've got a good grasp on that. I was curious about getting a more solid look at how magic works within the game world itself. You mentioned the weave, which is kind of how it works within Faerun. Is that the same concept that you have for Tahlvaen?
No, it's so Vera and Vera make up the resonance. From the resonance are the 5 aspects: air, earth, fire, water, and spirit. And when you want to cast a spell, you're weaving it. You're pulling those elements. You're saying, okay, I'm taking those strands of air or those strands of water out of the air, and you're weaving them together. You're compressing them or shaping them into the desired effect. That's why I call it weaving.
Okay.
I was very inspired by Robert Jordan in high school, so that's why a lot of this is it has that bent to it.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is something I'm realizing now. The 5 element system you have of air, earth, fire, water, and spirit is somewhat similar to the Japanese element system of air, earth, fire, water, and void. Did you use that as inspiration, or is that more just sort of an accident?
I think it's a happy accident because I did not know that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I thought of okay, if I wanted to cast fireball, how would I do that? Okay, I would I would take fire, and then I would volumize it with air, and that's how I would do that. That is mechanically like how I would do that. And if I wanted to heal, I would do it with water, because water would wash away something, or I would combine it with spirit, because spirit is going to be the thing that eases the pain, or washes away kind of that psychic burden. And that was the way that I kind of thought through it. That was the design decision for it.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good too. I was just curious.
Mm-hmm.
And the void that it explains within that system is actually quite similar to what you've described with spirit.
Okay.
It's not like a malevolent void. It's more like the Buddhist idea of denial of self. I'm not explaining it that well, but not important.
Well, I'm curious about it. So
yeah, it's called the Book of Five Rings. Is what you want to look up.
That's an old third edition system, or Legend of the Five Rings. Is that
Legend of the Five Rings is a system that is based around that elemental idea that was put forth in the Book of Five Rings philosophy book that was written by Miyamoto Musashi, who's like the best swordsman that ever lived.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when he was getting old, he wrote down a philosophy book that was sort of like a guide how to be a good person and a good swordsman. And it separated ways to act based on the five rings that he described, which is the elements. And then Legend of the Five Rings is about role-playing like Japanese noble stories, and uses the five rings, air, fire, water, and void, as its stat system.
Okay. So it's kind of a departure from like, the Bushido style or the samurai, caste type stuff, and it moves towards that other mechanic.
It still does a lot of samurai caste kind of stuff. The Legend of the Five Rings system. It's very much focused on like court drama, I want to say. Like that's not the only thing it does, but it really has a good system for that kind of stuff. Like there might be a conflict where like your character wants to pick someone to get engaged to, and there's two different options, and it's sort of like if you pick one, you're going to piss off the other, so how do you get to be engaged by the end of the adventure without pissing off the other one and starting a war for some reason? That's a example. So maybe like, you could bring in combat, like, the brother comes over after you've made your decision and wants to duel you for dishonoring his sister by not picking her, and this is a very male focus on it as well. It's not intended to be like male focused, but that's just our usual feeling about noble stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's a very good system for that kind of storytelling, and not that good for the more like adventure combat stuff that D&D usually does, because it takes a more realistic view where engaging in combat is dangerous, and you could very easily bleed to death or get an infection or other stuff like that. So you want to avoid it.
Generally, sharp stuff is bad for your health.
Yep, exactly. Or if you're going to do it, be really good at it. Is the other option. Yeah. Well, back to Tahlvaen. So I feel like we've done a lot of the broad strokes for the world as a whole, and now I wanted to focus in for a bit. And I'm assuming that you've detailed a bunch of different regions, and you've got sort of maybe quasi equivalents to like Earth regions, like, oh, here's the desert nomad people, and over here we have the people from that are trying to rebuild the broken empire and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Good.
Yep.
And you mentioned that there was like a kingdom that got you started on imagining it. I thought that might be a good one to sort of focus in on and learn a bit more about that kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it interesting, why not start off by describing a holiday that kingdom celebrates that is not celebrated in other parts of Tahlvaen, if there is one like that.
So Drelkareth is very dour, very solemn, very, very high Gothic, dark. One of the holidays that they celebrate, and I would call it a day of remembrance as opposed to a holiday itself. It's called the Ashing. It is a singular event that only affected them, and it's one of those things that was such a almost world-altering thing for the kingdom that it changed their entire way of being. They were not always as serious and oath-bound as they are now. So Tahlvaen has what are called Veilborn. They are weather events that happen. They are rare, and since there is weather in the Veil that mimics or mirrors what happens in the real world, sometimes they can stir things up on either side to where it will tear the veil open, and the storm from the veil actually passes through into the world, and bad things happen. And it can be anything. It can be something as small as it'll rain spiders for 5 minutes, which
okay.
You want to think about. Or it can be 50-mile-an-hour winds that sound like screaming. In the case of the acting, it was far worse and far longer. I'm going to read this from the primer.
Sure.
And then the sky burned. Balefire fell like rain, not in torrents, but in elegant, awful spirals. Thin, dancing, as if the world above had set itself alight and let the embers drift lazily down. Where each ember touched, the world blackened. Trees cracked open and bled sap like boiling oil. Rivers steamed into nothing. Stone caught fire. By the second day, the king had ordered a mass exodus from the lower valleys. But the roads had vanished under molten earth. Horses went mad, driven wild by pitch-toned whispers of the storm. The veil hung thick, yet there was no storm wall, no edge to cross. This deepening fire, this deepening silence. Entire villages were reduced to black glass in a single night. Families vanished mid-prayer. People began to hear names they didn't know, lovers they had never met. The priests turned to the gods. The gods didn't answer. The ashing continued. I cried when I actually wrote this, so.
Yeah, it's cool. It feels more like something that belongs in like a novel instead of a campaign setting book.
Yeah, it's part of the primer. The primer is going to have lore and myths in there, so this is.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, this is part of the lore for Drelkareth.
Have you thought about writing novels or short stories in the world?
No. Before this, I've only ever written like character backstories that my DM, like when I get to play, like my DMs are like, cool, it's another one of John's like level 1 character 5-page backstories. Like, dude, your character's level 1. Like, nobody has that much of an interesting backstory at level 1.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to give you stuff to work with.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
But yeah, this is the last part of it. It's only 2 parts. Alumanthics, eldest of her kind, did not rise like a warrior that day. She did not scream her defiance or rage against the storm. They say she spread her wings with no command, no herald, no farewells. Silver scales, once tempered and gold, had dimmed into an amber warmth, like the last light of a dying sun. When she reached the storm's heart, a tear in the sky where the veil had split and bled fire into the world, she began to sing. The notes that left her throat were not words, but something older, low and resonant, a harmony rooted deep in the loom. It was not a sound made for mortal ears. Though all who heard it still remember. The air grew still. Flames grew quiet. Where it passed, veil scars closed. The ground ceased to scream. Undead crumbled into dust where they stood, their threads unwoven and returned to the loom without violence or scorn. Song of Thera's harmony did not rewrite what had happened. It did not pretend the loss had not occurred. It sang the world back into balance. Those who had survived, the living, were lifted, their wounds healed without scar, their breath returned without cost. Poison faded, disease fled, curses broke, 1,000 afflictions vanished without fanfare. And she gave everything for it. The light that had clung to her form, radiant as it was gentle, dissolved into the air. In Varenhold, above the altar, at the heart of the temple, there stands a single window of flawless viridian-stained glass with a winged serpent, so luminous that it glows even at night. Not from candlelight, not from the sun. It is said to glow with the last breath of Alumanthics. And if one listens carefully, sometimes, and only sometimes, the window hums with the faintest echo of her song. No craftsman claims to have forged it. It simply appeared, they say, the morning after the storm ended. Some say the veil storm ended on its own. Some say the wind shifted. The oldest among Drelkareth, ones who still remember the old tales, know better. They say the storm was not ended. It was sung to sleep. And that is the ashing.
All right, cool. Sounds pretty nasty.
That is the last time that dragons were seen in Tahlvaen.
Well, I can see why you mentioned it's more of a remembrance than a holiday. So
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
So, you said this was in the kingdom of Drelkareth, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kingdom, so I'm assuming it has a king or a queen as the head of state.
Yes.
Is there anything else about the government that's important or interesting?
They are ruled by the king. He's more of a figurehead. It is the court that actually hold all the authority in the land. It would be like a president and the Supreme Court, but without the Senate and the House. And the Supreme Court would be the law of the land.
Okay.
And so his cousin is the High Justice, and she is not a person to be screwed with. She basically remembers everyone and everything. And yeah, that there's so much more to it. It's just it would take hours to unpack. And yeah, it's divided into counties,
Uh-huh.
and there are 4 counties in Drelkareth. Varenfell is the Crown Vale. It is where Varenhold is. That is the capital. It is ruled by the king or the queen, whoever it may be. But the ruler of this particular county is the Warden of Memory, High Countess Kareth. She is directly in line should the king pass away. She is very cold and unyielding, but that is kind of her in a nutshell. Andratha is kind of the next county in line. It is kind of the agricultural and logistical backbone of the kingdom. If you need food, or you need weapons, or you need anything else, that's where you get it. You get it from the Stedmark, which is Andratha's what they call it. They call it the Stedmark. Veilborn is next, and it is the Gray Strand. It's basically all of the northwestern coast of Ivara, which is the continent, and that is their naval hub, and it is ruled by Admiral Countess Thorshivarnen and her husband. And there is Eisenhold, which is located up in the mountains, and it is one of the Veilholds, because the mountains, the Storm March, is one of the places where there are a lot of border fortresses, because once you get into the kind of the northern cross reach, the polar cap, there are a lot of Veil monstrosities up there, and that's what Eisenhold does. They garrison there for troops.
This is sounding pretty well-rounded for this kingdom.
Yeah, that's it is. There's a lot to it. I'm painting this in very broad strokes because there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I feel like we got a good overview of the world, and some a region in it. But yeah, there's too much to really go deeper than that.
Yeah. I mean, there's Halvara, which is basically the Latin American continent. It's very Aztec, Mayan, Peruvian, Central American in its flavor. And then there's Tahlvaen, which it's an island archipelago in the equatorial waters of the world, but it also has Thailand and Philippines, but also like Greco-Roman as well, because I wanted kind of that Mediterranean feel to it. It's a lot of disparate civilization down there. And then there's Christ, which is on the southern half of the world, which is kind of Australia and Antarctica combined, and everything in Christ will kill you just like Australia.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there's actually not a whole lot in Christ to talk about. Everything is on the Shattered Coast, and it's more or less just isolated fishing villages. All the interior is more or less like seasonal nomadic tribal nomads.
Yeah, I was curious. So you mentioned like what the world offers for players with like the classes and races. I'm curious what you're offering DMs. I saw some of the monsters that you had.
Mm-hmm.
So can you give us like a cool monster that's like a special thing that you've made?
The Breath Stealer. It is a monster where players are going to hate their DMs because everybody loves cats, and everybody's going to want to let the cat in that they find just sitting around outside. And
Breath Stealer. Okay, now I know what you mean.
yeah, it kind of mews and meows, and everybody has to make a wisdom saving throw or be put into a slumber, and then it kind of reveals its true form as it sits on your chest and sucks the life out of you.
Okay, yeah. It's kind of like that monster in the Captain Marvel movie. For people that aren't familiar with this like folklore, cats are sometimes called breath stealers because they would like get into like the crib with an infant and then snuggle next to the infant because like cats like warm bodies and the infant can't really get away from them. And then in the process, because baby infants can't really move for humans, the cat would accidentally suffocate the infant, and thus cats were called breath stealers because they'd come in and they'd cuddle with your baby and then accidentally kill it.
So that's one of the ones that I'm pretty proud of because there's a lot of other ones. There's one called a marsh walker, and it's just this large-ish looking thing, and it's got eyes all over it, but it's just mostly ineffectual. It just kind of stands there and stares. um, it's just kind of off-putting. If like
Yeah.
if you just leave it alone, like you're not going to get into combat with it. But then there's a lot. I have 48 uniquely horrible warped monsters that are coming in the Game Master's Guide for players or for GMs to do nightmarish things to their players with.
Of course. That's the style. What about like evil organizations for the GM to use? Like you mentioned that there were some cults and stuff like that.
The Outer Five have cults associated with them. I am still in the process of writing that stuff out. I have notes from when I was like 16 or 17, and I'm going to be honest with you and your listeners that I can't read my handwriting from when I was 16.
Oh no.
I'm
all right.
I am trying to decipher it. The one organization that is not on the evil side is called the Pale Vigil, but I always like the idea of an organization that's out there just documenting. They're always there. They're trying to catalog what all these things are and like the best ways to fight them. So you have wardens and inquisitors of the Pale Vigil, and the wardens of the Pale Vigil are not wardens like the player class. They're just warriors.
Yeah. It's a word.
Yeah, it's just a title. But they have some resonance bound gear, which is just resonance bound is just my way of saying it's magical. That's like the one organization that I have fleshed out. Otherwise, the Outer Five have cultists that are associated with them. The cults do not have names. They are just signs of cult influence, is what I have in here. So, but
okay.
The GM's guide is only about 50% written right now because I had to get it into copyright before I lost my copyright thing and had to renew it, which I did not want to pay $900 for again. So,
yeah. Well, I think we've reached the end of my questions. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about for the books of the world?
No, I mean, I have talked more about this tonight with you than I have talked with anybody about it. So, yay!
Cool.
I'm happy to have talked so much.
Well, I always finish off by asking if you have any advice for other GMs. So, got anything you want to share there?
Don't be afraid to make things up. At the end of the day, the guys at PAX, the Penny Arcade guys, the folks at Critical Role, they are amazing. They are truly masters and mistresses of their craft. But don't be afraid to be your own GM. It's most of us don't have a budget of $10 million to produce a show with. Just get together with your friends, whether it's on Discord or Roll20 or, at the table and just have fun, roll the dice. Don't be afraid to not be married to a plot. It's at the end of the day, if your players don't get to what you have planned, they'll get there eventually. Buying your cat a $500 cat tree and having the idiots sit in the box for 3 weeks because they're happier with that. Like, the players are going to do the thing that you least expect them to do. If they're happy doing that, let them be happy doing that. By hook or by crook, you'll get them to the end eventually. Just let them enjoy the journey. I show up to most of my games. My players are like, "What do we got planned today?" And I'm like, "That's a great question. I slept like 4 hours and I just worked a 12-hour day. We're both going to find out." That's basically my go-to advice. Like, don't be afraid to wing it. It's some of the funniest, coolest, weirdest adventures can happen when you're just making stuff up on the fly.
All right, well, cool. Thanks, John. That was really good.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. I appreciate it.
I hope you guys enjoyed learning about Tahlvaen and what John's working on for the Veilborn campaign setting. The Kickstarter should be launching in April of 2026 if everything goes according to plan, so look for it then. There is a link in the episode description for following the campaign now if you'd like to get into it early and get little updates as it gets closer. There's also plenty of socials you can follow John on Facebook, Instagram, that kind of stuff. If you'd like to stay more connected to Setting the Stage, the Discord is getting active with weekly questions that I ask people about their campaigns. So you can join in and answer those questions or read other people's and get ideas for your own campaign. I'd love to see you there. This episode has been brought to you by Darren, who's one of our supporters on Patreon, so give him a big thank you. This has been Setting the Stage. I'm Isaac Shaker, and thank you for listening.